course, welcoming Rashad Evans here to the program. UFC on Fox 19, get ready to face off against Glover Teixeira in Tampa, Florida. If you're in Florida, get tickets, get there. You need to see these fights live. It's a rarity that you're going to get these kind of big names fighting in Florida. The UFC now, especially with New York opening up, I feel like Florida's not going to be seen as much anymore. Everyone's going to start moving over to New York, you know? First of all, being from Niagara Falls, how happy were you when the announcement came out that New York finally, our home state, finally said, look, we're going to jump on the MMA bandwagon now?
Yeah, I was happy about it, man. It's been a long time coming, too, because I've been part of the process for a couple years in a row. Went and actually lobbied a couple years for the UFC and really, had some hopes years back that it would actually happen. It made it to the floor a couple times, but it died there on the floor. And finally, I didn't follow this year, and I did just because I felt like every time I did, I kind of felt like I jinxed it. So this time I didn't follow it, so I stayed away, and then it ended up happening.
Yeah, there's some crazy things that came out. I mean, Rosie O'Donnell's brother, called it gay porn, and I mean, it's which is a little upsetting considering that his sister is a lesbian. It's like, why would you say that? Like, it doesn't make any he's just an insensitive prick, overall. But then to call MMA that kind of thing that's just a little disrespectful and silly. But there was some highs and lows definitely in this process. But then I think it was either Dana Lorenzo came out and said, yeah, we want to go to Madison Square Garden first, but it just may not work out. We're looking for something later on this year. We're going to try and do 2 in New York. But they mentioned names like Syracuse, Rochester, Buffalo. So it could be upstate. It could be Western New York where we're from. It could be the first time the UFC comes in town. It could be right in our home territory. Are you going to, if it is, and it's and you got rest time after you win this fight, you got some rest time, you're able to come back. Are you going to try and absolutely be like, look, I have to be on this card? It's going to be one of those guys, I never pulled any chips in. I'm pulling 1 chip in right now. You've got to put me on this card.
Yeah, this is definitely one of those chips I'm going to put in. I mean, I'm going to lobby hard to be on the first New York card. And, especially if it's at home. To be able to fight at home is amazing. My mom has never even went to one of my fights before. And, part of it's because she just always a little too nervous. But at the same time, traveling and everything else like that, she just, it's just something she doesn't want to do. But if it's closer to home, it'll be, less of an excuse that she has to come and see it. And, a lot of other my family members who can't afford to go and make the trip can finally make the trip. And, people that just really help make me who I am right now, can actually be there and be a part of the whole experience. So it'll be amazing. In Niagara Falls.
Still in Niagara Falls. Okay, so if the first fight's in Rochester, it's an hour and 15. If it's in Buffalo, it's 20 minutes. If it's Syracuse, a little far, it's maybe 2.5 hours, but still driving distance, not too bad. It could be. I mean, this is a reality. This thing could be happening very, very quickly. You know how the UFC is. It goes from maybe just talking to it to all of a sudden we have a date signed and we're ready to go. It's overnight. So.
Yeah, it'd be great. And here's another thing that a lot of people are really not talking about. With it being opened up and sanctioned in New York, now it's making it a lot safer for fighters because we know, it was MMA in New York. It was just on reservations and stuff like that, and it wasn't by the sanctioning body. So, with it being having a sanctioning body with the boxing commission and everything else like that, it's going to be a lot safer for these fighters because when you're under the governing body of the rules that we use, it just makes it a lot better. And the fact that we have such a great track record with mixed martial arts, no one really being seriously injured and no death, is due to the fact that we have these rules. So it makes it a lot safer for these fighters as well, too.
Yeah, most people don't know that I ref MMA now. I'm actually licensed in California and in Hawaii to ref pro. And I had no idea. Literally, I thought I knew all the rules until I took John McCarthy's and Herb Dean's course. And all of a sudden I realized I had no idea really what I was looking at and the safety that goes into this and the mindset that goes into just getting you into the cage. Everything that goes on, the rules, the regulations, to make it so that as a fighter you can entertain us and still walk out of there. Now, you might be bloodied, you might be cut up. It's a fight. We're going to get hit with elbows, you get hit with knees, but you're still going to be able to walk out of there and not have to worry about, we got to rush in the hospital. Dada 5000 is the rarity where all of a sudden had a heart attack in the ring, and that's a rarity issue. But most of the time, it's super safe because of all these commissions have all stepped up, and it's been a long, huge process. and can't tell you, how happy I am personally. Finally, it's come together. It is possible if they have two fights, one could be upstate, and then the second fight could be down at Madison Square Garden. And they've said that's going to be the fight that's going to end all fights. It's going to be the biggest fight they've ever had, the biggest names, the biggest thing. Are you going to try and pull in a second chip to get on that card too?
Definitely. I mean, when you look at what fighting is, and you think about the whole like Muhammad Ali versus Joe Frazier, and you think about how big that was at Madison Square Garden, and it was just an event to go to. People were just, it was like a red carpet event. You know what I'm saying? It would be amazing to see UFC be done in the same kind of fashion. And I think that's one thing that'll take the sport to the next level because, we have our share of celebrities and things like that, but, it's not, it still hasn't had that same, that same, like that red carpet affair that you'll see, some of the big boxing matches in particular, the Madison Square Garden and Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier fight. So that'd be amazing to see. Finally, UFC gets baptized with that official, like, this is the show.
Yeah, finally. So let's move on. We can talk about this all day long. I'm so excited and so passionate about it. I'll spend hours on it. We got to talk about Glover Teixeira. First, I got to ask, you have a pretty busy television schedule that the UFC has you on. At what point do you have to tell them, no, look, I got to stop because I'm in training camp?
Usually I like to do it like 8 weeks before. And, the thing that happens is a lot of times when you go to these shows, just traveling to do it is the hardest thing about it. And a lot of the guys on the West Coast, they just gobble up the as much as they can because it's not too much a problem. For me, I got to go across the country being in South Florida. So it's definitely a bigger trip for me. So I tell them that I can't do it, 8 weeks on out. And then they're really supportive because they want to see me go and do well too. So it's not too much of a problem, but I guess being busy for that is actually a good problem to have. It's a good problem to have.
Yeah, but still, it is difficult when you're trying to get ready for a fight and you're trying to make another title run. You can't do that if in the middle, every other week you got to take off for 3 or 4 days. It just doesn't work out that way. So I'm glad you're able to say, look, I can sit back for a little bit.
And that's a hard thing too, because it's like, on one aspect, you're working on two careers as a sense. You're still hunting to be the best you can as a fighter, but at the same time, you understand that you can't fight forever. You can't fight forever. No matter how good you are, you can't fight forever. So start working on other areas that round you out as an individual where you can actually, continue to make a living after you get done and you can't fight any longer. So it becomes a tough balance, but it's something that you have to do.
Right. And so obviously this is a career, this is your retirement plan, is to be on TV, still being a commentator once you retire, but you're a long way from that at this point.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, you guys are from opposite ends of the planet where you're born, but you train, about 45 minutes apart from each other? And then you got to travel 2.5 hours up the coast to go fight. So this is almost, not only are you battling, it's the reality show again. It's Black Zillions versus ATT again. This is what it's come out to. Break down Glover as you see him, because you're a great analysis. You have a great breakdown of other fights. I want to see how you break down Glover for us.
Well, Glover Teixeira, he has knockout power in both hands. And in his last few fights, he's shown the ability to take guys down, not only to take them down, but control them on the ground in areas where he wasn't before. Before he lost to John Jones and before that Phil Davis fight, you're looking Glover kind of made himself a bit one-dimensional, trying to look for that home run shot and was really that kind of pressure fighter. But his last two fights, he's shown that he has that ability to take the fight where he wants to and dominate the way that he wants to. And now if you're looking at Glover, a guy who's a bit pissed off. He seems like he has something to prove, and a fighter who has something to prove is always a dangerous fighter, because that's a fighter who's working around the clock. That's a fighter who's trying to look at all the little nuances in the game and see where he can get better. And here's another thing about Glover Teixeira. Glover Teixeira, for years, was Chuck Liddell's training partner before he has a chance to get an opportunity he is right now in the UFC. So for so long, he's been the guy who's been training with the best guy in the world. And he has that experience of training with some of the best guys in the world with Chuck Liddell and everything else that the pit camp had. So you're looking at a very experienced, very tough fighter. Okay,
so how are you going to have to neutralize him? Like, what steps do you have to take to make sure that you get the victory?
Well, first things first, whenever I'm at my best and it's no secret about it, I have to return to my wrestling. Whenever I get too far away from what I do best, with my wrestling, start moving around like Machida, or don't not using my wrestling, then that's a less effective Rashad Evans. That's a Rashad Evans who's not really making his opponent work and challenge in a ways where he doesn't know what Rashad's going to do. So that's what I got to return to. I just got to go back to what made me who I am, what made me the world champion. And the truth of the matter is, the fighting game has changed in a sense, but at the end of the day, the fundamentals still remain the same. You know what I'm saying? There's only so many ways that you can stroke a cat, and to be honest, it's still the same. You got to keep a guy off balance. You got to make a guy think that when you're wrestling, you're really punching, and when you're punching, you're really wrestling, and that dynamic will never change, no matter how many different styles, no matter how many people come and try to put all kinds of different twists on it. And that's what I got to get back to, just getting back to my fundamentals.
So how hard has it been to get guys to come in and spend time wrestling MMA style, though? There's a lot of great wrestlers out there that come in and train. Yeah. You can call the Olympic Training Center and get a ton of guys to come out and work with you just on wrestling, but you need MMA wrestling. So how hard has it been to find guys that can actually match you and push you in MMA wrestling?
It's tough. That's really challenging because, like you said, you have guys who wrestled in high school and have a bit of wrestling, but the thing about MMA is sometimes when you're a wrestler that had a pretty good pedigree in MMA, and then you start doing MMA for so long, your wrestling kind of falls off because you don't need the technique that you do in MMA to take guys down, and you can take guys down a lot easier than you would. So after a while, you kind of train a lot of bad habits. So then you gotta, so then your takedowns that you would do in college wrestling, they're not as what they would be in MMA. So I had to find some guys who are really, really good, still have that college wrestling base a bit, in a sense. You know what I'm saying? And then from there, I just work on pace, work on distance. So what I'll say is, okay, this is where I'm going to take my shot, and I want you just to keep extending your arm out. I don't even want them to punch. I just want them to keep extending the arm out, so then I can work on my distance, my range, and my timing. Because it's really hard to get guys that are good MMA wrestlers once they start doing MMA. Even my wrestling has fallen off a lot since I started doing MMA, and it's something that you gotta constantly make sure that you're staying fresh on, because it's just a different ball game.
Did you bring guys in? Did you have to recruit guys to come over to Blackzilians, or were there guys in the room already that you had?
I bring some guys in. Greg Jones. He does a good job of bringing, some guys that are still in college, some guys that are making that transition, whether they want to fight or they want to pursue a higher level of wrestling. So, it stays pretty free with different guys coming in, and pretty challenging. Earlier this week, Greg Jones brought his brother, Virtus Jones in, and Virtus is one of the badasses from West Virginia, and I got a chance to learn some technique from him. So, doing stuff like that keeps it fresh, keeps it so that, my wrestling is growing, and I feel like, my wrestling has kind of been in the decline. You know what I'm saying? So now I'm kind of getting back to what made me great again.
Well, so now you got your wrestling back again. Of course, Neil Melanson left Machine Couture and came over to Blackzilians, and he's my grappling coach. And it's your grappling game has to be increasing then as well, because personally I found my grappling got better when my wrestling got better, because I was able to control where we were landing, how I was passing, and immediately into my top game submission if I needed it, or my bottom game if I slipped on a banana peel and fell on my back. I still knew how to get to the positions I needed to get to. Have you found your grappling game getting better as your wrestling's getting better?
I definitely have, and especially working with Neil. I think Neil is a genius. You know what I'm saying? Like, some of the concepts and stuff that we work on and we do, I'm leaving the gym just like, wow, I can't believe I never thought of that before. And it's something that it doesn't seem too complex, but the way he does it, he just simplifies it and makes it just so like, damn, I could have been doing this the whole time. But it's very, very effective, and it's very punishing. Even if you go, Neil is one of the strongest guys I ever rode with, but just going with him a little bit and feeling his pressure, feeling the technique that he does, you're like, I'm thinking when I'm going, I'm like, this cannot be grappling. This cannot be jiu-jitsu because it just doesn't feel like everything I've been doing for the last 13 years. It just doesn't feel like it.
Yeah, it's a different kind for folks that can get to a seminar with Neil. Need to go because it's a different kind. He's a huge man, 6'7", 250, 265, 275, depending on how much he's lifting weights. Missing a toe, blind in one eye, deaf in an ear, and will beat the living crap out of you all day long. But he puts so much pressure on you, he doesn't hurt you. Like he can roll with Ricky Lindell. He rolls with Ricky Lindell when he's in Vegas, and Ricky's a little guy, and Neil puts a task on him, but it doesn't hurt him. So it's like you can actually get real pressure, and see, well, I really can hurt somebody in this position, but I don't need to because I've got every little piece locked up, every little thing in the right direction. It's awesome that he's got such a great team to move from one great team to another great team out there at Black Zillions and teaching so much. How is your hand game? Because you spent so much time on your boxing earlier in your career because that was the one, obviously, as a wrestler, you don't know what you're doing. You got the wrestling disease where you're like, I can hit people and they can't take me down, so I'm just going to hit people. And you said it earlier, you got away from your wrestling. But even when you got back to your wrestling, you're still like, I can still hit people, so why spend the energy grinding against the cage to get that one single when I can just take a half step back, hit you, and come back in again? Have you backed off on not necessarily the learning of your boxing game, but the volume that you do every week in your boxing game?
One thing I worked on more than anything to kind of, I feel like, it was the love of just knocking somebody, like you said, and getting and calling it a fast night. But one thing I started to work on was what was making me really, not want to or feel comfortable going for my wrestling. And it was, not so much that I fell in love with the strikes, even though it did feel so natural, but it was, I was so focused on my stand-up and my boxing that I forgot that little glue that binds my wrestling with my striking with my wrestling, and that's the transitions. So I was like, you know what? I got to get back to my transitions. So what I do is some days I just take a whole day and just work on nothing but transitions, just moving and going and mixing up, whether am I going for a punch or am I going for a shot? And I just do nothing but transitions and do that movement of the transitions, that up and down, the level changes. And then that's when everything seems to flow, when it's just so ambiguous where I don't even know, like, I'm just going with the flow. Like when I feel it, I do it. And then that's where the flow starts to go. And I'm not really thinking about, am I going to strike or am I going to wrestle? It just kind of happens.
Rashad, thanks for coming on here. Really appreciate you spending some time with us here at MMAOddsBreaker. No, busy schedule. I know it's tough to get shit done on a day-to-day basis. I appreciate it so much. That's Sugar Rashad Evans getting ready to face Glover Teixeira coming up here on UFC on Fox 19. Thanks, Rashad, man. Have a great rest of your training camp. Say hi to the boys for me out there. We'll talk again soon.
And take it easy. Bye.